Welcome to PM Untold, Unlocking the Path to Success. This podcast unravels the hidden stories behind exceptional leadership to excel in your own leadership endeavors. Brought to you by the collaboration of PMI Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Subscribe to PM Untold today and join us as we redefine leadership one story at a time.
Welcome to PM Untold. I am Ana Felisberto and I'll be your host today. I am a project manager in the banking sector and volunteer member at the Luxembourg PMI chapter. We have our guest today and I'm very pleased to present Diepak Kasi. Diepak is an experienced trainer and coach. He helps people from all over the world to improve their leadership skills and achieve their objectives. He has created his own training program to support people on their personal growth. Deepak has worked over 20 years as an experienced professional in the telecommunication and IT environment. He turned his focus to helping managers and executives to even further expand the reach of their personal leadership skills. So Deepak, welcome to PM Untold.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for having me here.
We are very happy to have you here with us today. So could you please tell us, the audience, something more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, well, that's always a tricky question to ask, I would say, because there's so many ways for answering that question, Anna. But I will not indulge in all those different kind of variation. So the one thing is that, if you look at my name already, Deepak Kasi, it's an Indian name. And when people look at me, they could say like, hey, Deepak, you have an Indian background. And the funny thing is, yes, I have an Indian background, but I've never been to India. So I was not born in India or anywhere near India, I would say. So I've been raised mostly in Netherlands, but I was born in Suriname in South America. And from education, I'm an electrical engineer. So that's what I did, and that's what I studied. But I worked primarily in the IT and telecommunications world for a very long time, as you mentioned in your introduction already. So there's much more to say, but maybe that will come more in during our conversation, I would say.
So that's very interesting. You were born in South America and come back to Europe.
Yeah.
So you never visit India. Okay, me neither, but I hope one day.
Me too.
Because I think it's a beautiful country. As electronic engineer, so what got you into the project manager world?
Well, actually, it took me a long time to get into the project management world. I originally started as a teacher when I was in the Navy. When we had the military service, I was in the Navy and I was a teacher there. And my first job actually in the telecommunication industry was being a teacher as well. I was training people in using our telecommunication equipment. That was great. And after that, I did other things. I became a test engineer and I worked as a field manager or how to say a regional manager where we employed people at various companies. Actually, we placed them at companies. And after a while, I was looking for another opportunity again. And then somebody told me like, hey, we need project managers in this company. And actually it was the original company I started working for originally in my first job. And I said, well, I don't know. I've never done project management. And he said, well, knowing you, it was somebody I knew, said, knowing you, I think you can do it. So I applied for the job and actually I got the job. And that's how that was my introduction into the project management world. And actually the fun thing was that I was doing actually programs at that time, running multiple projects in various countries in Europe. So that was my introduction to the PM world, and I loved it.
Oh, that's great and very interesting because you have indeed a very vast experience. So teaching and starting project manager, already managing big projects. It's quite
Yeah,
challenging but interesting.
it was. Yeah.
So where does your inspiration come from?
Well, in the project management world back then, it was I wanted to work in an international environment. I mean, traveling has always been something that was big for me. I love traveling, and this new job was how to say was had the promise of traveling a lot, and that was something that inspired me to get into the PM world. Um, Looking at my inspiration today, it's coming from a total different place, um, and that's how to say it's more from like, hey, what can I do to help people to have a better quality of life? That question inspires me a lot.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. And well, indeed, it's a bridge for my next question because you have changed, well, you change your work, and
Hmm.
you now are self-employed. So I'd
Yeah,
like to ask you, what motivates you to leave the corporate world and well, and change?
yeah, great. Well, the thing is that my decision to become self-employed was not like something that I pursued to become self-employed. So maybe I need to take a few steps back, if I may, Anna, um, because the point that I want to get across to the listeners is to think about why they do what they're doing. And as basic as that question sounds, people hardly take the time to answer that question. And for me back then, when I made the switch, that was very important. Um, and I want to take you with me in my thinking, if that's okay, Anna, what I did back then. And I want to do that by exploring a few possible answers. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So if you look at the possible answers to that question about why I'm doing what I'm doing, um, one of the answers could be like I'm good at this, and um, and I really hope that when people answer that question that way, that they're really good at what they're doing, because otherwise their company or their boss will not be happy with them long term. So I really hope that they're good at it, or they have the intention of becoming good at it. Um, the second possible answer could be that I love doing this. And that's even better, because if it's something that you do because you love it, you would probably do it for free as well, or in your spare time. You wouldn't mind giving up your time to do it because you really love doing it. A third possible answer to that question could be that there's a need for what you're doing in the world or in your direct environment, and you see that you can help empowering people to make a positive change in their life, or if you like, you can help animals in need, and whether that's because they're being extincted, or the conditions that they live in, or just to keep this planet a little bit greener and bluer, I would say. Um, and a fourth possible answer, and that's what resonates with most people, is like, can I make money with this? So I'm doing this thing that I'm doing because I can make money with it. And this is actually the answer that we have to be really careful about, because we live in a part of the world where we need money to survive. You hear about people living in certain countries in conditions where they earn less than $2 per day, and I can guarantee you that's not us. That's not us in this part of the world. So we need the money, and we have a choice in what we will do to earn that money, and how much money do you want to earn. So those are important questions before you make a decision of what you're going to do. Um, so I will get back to your question, Anna, and interrupt me if you feel like, hey, I need some clarification here and there. Um, but I'm taking you with me on this journey from going from corporate roles to being self-employed. And in 2012, I became self-employed, and it was not because I wanted to, but because that was the option that was available to me. I wanted to quit my job as a project manager at that time. And not because I didn't like my job anymore, but because I lost the trust in my management. You hear very often people saying that they don't quit their job, they quit their manager. Um, that was me. I couldn't fire them, so I had to fire myself. Um, I made calls, I sent emails to people I knew, and the only opportunity that became available and I could move into very quickly, and very quickly is within a month or so, was the one that led me to being self-employed. Um, so that was my journey from being from corporate to being self-employed. Um, so that answers that question to for you, I think. Um, any thoughts about that? Any questions from your side?
No, it was indeed very clear and the answer
Yeah,
the question, of course. And
yeah,
well, you are. It seems that you are a very structured person. So you, all the questions that you were referring,
yeah,
it is indeed important
yeah,
to make that step and the
yeah.
change.
By the way, later on, I learned that those questions that I just mentioned to you, those four questions. Later, I learned in life that those questions are called the ikigai. Um it's called the ikigai, and ikigai is finding your sweet spot. So the cross section of what you're good at, so what you like to do, what you're good at, what you love to do, what you're good at, where there's need for in the world, and where you can make money with. If you get at the cross section of that, that's called your ikigai, or in English we call that the sweet spot. So if you find that, you are at the perfect place.
It's a good advice, and I think almost everyone reach a point in life that makes sense to do that and
Yeah,
evaluate the situation. But
yeah.
even if you already started to talk about on your challenges, may I
Hmm.
ask you what were the biggest challenge in your transition, and if you have any story that you like to share with us?
Well, the thing is that um, I made many career changes in my life. And I was really afraid to take on this new challenge. And there was a challenge or a risk, I would say, at that time. The self employed contract that I was entering into was a 3-month contract. And I was about to give up a permanent job for a 3-month contract. I've been working in that role for I don't know, for 12, 13 years. And I was about to give up that certainty, or if you can call it a certainty, uh, because, there's there are reductions going on all the time. I mean, at that time, especially, there were reductions going on all the time. And so I was about to give up that job security. I was about to give up a status that I had. And I was about to give up the company car, right? So that's a big thing. And I was all going to give that up for a 3-month contract. And um, I started in May 2012 being self-employed with this other company on a 3-month contract. And that 3-month contract became an almost 3-year contract. And I'm grateful to my manager back then at this new company, Geert, a Belgium guy, uh, at that time, who stood up for me and endorsed me in a way. So I had to take the risk first to, how to say, to get the reward later. And very often in life, we want to have some certainty about the reward that we're going to get. And very often in life, it doesn't work that way. And so I gave up the certainty, I took the risk, and I got rewarded for that. Um, and later on in my life, if looking at now, why did I make that choice to become um, self-employed, and what made me to change that again, because I became self-employed, and it was quite a secure job, more or less, because I was still working in the project management environment. I was working as a project management consultant, helping this company to set up their project management office. um, And that was great. But I think the real challenge for me started when I stopped doing that um, in March 2015. So almost 3 years later. Almost 3 years later, in March, in earlier March that year, my father passed, and I knew that my contract was up for renewal, and in the same month, by the way. And I decided not to extend my contract. I thought like, I don't want to do this anymore. I realized that I had no control of my time because, with my father's passing, I realized that I wasn't flexible. I couldn't be with my dad when I felt like I wanted to be there. Uh, and with all the arrangements around his passing, I had to make room with my work and organizing that. And I noticed that, I have no control of my time. I don't have the freedom to show up at the office when I want to. Um, and I couldn't, so I became more aware that I couldn't be with the people that I love most when they needed me most. And at that time, my mother was already 78 and her health would not improve. In the later years, they would not improve. And I wanted to be with her as much as possible. And there were some other changes happening at the company that I was working for at that time that I couldn't support. So I was putting all those things together, and I thought, like, I have to leave. I have to leave this position. And then became the scary part for me because I did nothing for 6 months. I had no income for 6 months, actually a little bit longer than that. I had no income at all. But I still had to pay my mortgage. I had to still pay all the things that I had. Um, so I used that time, the 6 months, to think about what I want to do with my life. What do I want to do as a job? Um, and the thoughts that were going through my head was like, what will give me the freedom how to spend my time? Um, how will I have the flexibility to work from anywhere? And what can I do to earn enough money to pay the bills and to enjoy my trips, my vacations, and support other people in my life, like my kids, um, to make sure that, hey, they are also taken care of. And that's when I decided to become a coach and a trainer. So that's a long answer to your question about the risk and the challenges. Um, but that's really when the risk really started, because now I was entering a field where I didn't have any professional experience, because I have been training. I mean, the reason I came to the conclusion that I'm going to become a coach and a trainer is because I have been training people and coaching people since my first personal development event in 2004 in London. And I loved it so much. And I thought I have to teach this to other people. So I started doing this, and I organized 1 day trainings, and I organized the venue at a hotel and invited people. And I just made enough money so I could pay for the venue. And so I didn't really make money from that. But I loved doing it. I loved it so much. Like, wow, this is great. And people valued it a lot. And I thought, like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm going to do more of this. And I kept doing that. And I even did it for the company that I was working for at that time in the Netherlands and in Belgium. I was organizing trainings in my spare time. And I didn't get paid for it. But I loved doing it. I was doing it after work hours. I just love doing it. And now in 2015, I thought, like, you know what, I'm going to make a career out of that. And that's when the real, how to say, challenge started, because how are you going to make money in doing something you love to do, there's a need for in the world, and I felt that I was good at. um, so that was when the real challenge started for me, and that's when the risk um, entered, because I still had to yeah, pay everything that was going on in my life. Um, so yeah, so that's an even longer answer to your question, Anna.
No, but it was good, and indeed, well, you mentioned a lot of topics, important ones. So personal life, that is, it's very important for us, and at the end, I think it's what keep us going
Yeah,
and make us inspired to change. But indeed, you mentioned that you were already a trainer, so maybe it was not immediately for you, but it makes sense.
yeah.
So, but
Well, I was sorry. I was a
yeah,
trainer. I was a teacher or trainer in early in my career. You mean when I started in my
yes,
corporate
exactly,
jobs? Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
exactly. But this was totally different. I was scared.
Yes,
Because
I
now I have to
imagine
make
it.
money from this. I wouldn't get there was not a secure pay check coming in every month. Now I have to make the money come in somehow.
Yes.
Yeah,
Indeed, and it's good that you mentioned, because it needs courage, okay, to change this way. So it's good that you are mentioning this. But anyway,
yeah.
you are a very experienced person, and so you changed, but you already had your experience in the corporate world.
hmm
So what skills that you could share that were most valuable for your new adventure?
Yeah, well, you know, the great thing about project management is that it's almost like you're running your own company already. I think all project managers feel the responsibility that they have for their project. I mean, they have to get people to work together. They have to make sure that they stay within their budget. They have to make sure that they get things done on time. There are so many things that they need to take into account as a project manager. And very often, I think that the profession of a project manager is undervalued. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, um, but um, I was a few months ago. I was speaking with somebody, a client actually, and I told her about my background and in project management, that I used to be a project manager before, and and she was going like, "Oh, project manager." You're like, what? uh, how can you just hear a title and and say something like that? Because obviously she didn't have a real understanding. I mean, she was the CEO of a company, and I was saying like, you don't really have an understanding of what a project manager means, because it's a really responsible job. And I mean, many people are responsible for a lot of money, and the budget could be quite big that they are responsible for and that they're managing. So so a sense of responsibility that comes with being a project manager. Um, so it's not maybe directly the same thing, but you're gonna have this awareness, like, hey, wait a minute, I need to make this work. I need to put things into order. There needs to be a plan. I mean, I could make a Gantt chart for everything that I did. I didn't, but I could do that, right? But that way of thinking that you develop being a project manager, you take that into being self-employed, and whether it's being self-employed you by yourself or having your own business with having a few people working for you. I mean, that system of thinking is so valuable, and it actually enters your life and all the different areas of your life. I mean, even at home, I would be thinking about, what should I do first? What's going to make sense? What can I do in parallel? How can I, the shortest path or the longest path? And I'm going to make all those kind of comparisons in my mind, and I'm going to work with that. I'm still using that subconsciously, actually. So those kind of skills that I've learned in my corporate job as a project manager, I'm still using that on a day-to-day basis, I would say. Yeah, Anna.
Mm. Thank you, Deepak. Indeed, it's important, and well, I work in the same company for a long time, and I feel always that I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I've been given for learning.
Yeah.
I understand your view.
Mm.
Um, So going just back a little bit, you talk about risks, but how do you handle the uncertainty and the risks that are associated to your current job?
Yeah. So if I can explain something, um, as human beings, we have a number of needs in our life, right? And there's this philosophy. I think Tony Robbins. I don't think I know. Tony Robbins came up with this philosophy of the 6 human needs, and we have 6 human needs, and those 6 human needs, to from the bottom to the top, are first have a need for certainty, and then we have a need for variety, and then we have a need for significance, and then we have a need for love or connection, and then we have a need for growth, and then a need for contribution. So without going to too much detail about it, my need was not certainty. So I mean, if you are certain about, you need to have some certainty in your life, otherwise you won't do anything at all. I mean, if you're not certain about if the roof above your head will hold or not, then you're not going to feel safe. So you're not going to stay in that environment. You're going to run away. But if you have a level of certainty that you can operate from, and everybody has a different level of certainty, then you're going to look at the other needs that you have. And for me, variety was a big thing. I mean, I said earlier, I made many changes in my career before. And not that I really hated the job or I needed variety, but I was not afraid to start something else. And sometimes I had to give up a lot of things to start something new again. Uh, so certainty was not big for me, and that's why I didn't see the risk as something. I'm not trying to make it sound dramatic, but I didn't see it something as that would kill me. Right? I knew that I was going to survive. I'm gonna either find a way, get through this, or I will create a way to get through this. So the risks that were in front of me, I saw them always as, I can manage this risk. I'm going to find a way to deal with this. Or I'm going to find a solution that's going to get me even beyond this point. So the risk was never something that I really was afraid of.
That's a very good point of view. Well, a very good point indeed.
Yeah.
So, as you were mentioning this, how do you manage your work-life balance as being well self-employed?
Yeah. Well, I think being self-employed, it's going to be even more important to manage your work-life balance. Um, and by the way, work-life balance for me is not making sure that you spend enough, the same amount of time on your personal life as you spend on your work life. Um, work-life balance means that you spend the appropriate amount of time in your work environment and in your personal environment, so you can really get what you wanted from those areas. So to be more detailed about that, how do I manage that? I have a very clear structure for myself. I have 2 areas that I need to manage. As you say, you have your work, and I would say your professional side that you want to manage, and you have your personal side that you want to manage. And in all those, and in those both areas, I would say professional and personal, you will have different domains, as I would call it. So to give you an example, in my personal domain, I have my health. My health is number one always. I always spend enough time on my health to make sure that I have the energy to do the things that I want to do, but also I have the vitality and the longevity to be, how to say, old in a healthy, or to get old in a healthy way. Um, so that's always number one for me. So that's one domain in my personal uh, area of life. And then there's my relationship with my girlfriend, with my actually the relationship is one area only with my girlfriend. And then I have my family. So that's my kids, my brother, my sister, and some other family around that. And then I have some other pieces like social, like the people that I like to hang out with. And I have thought about these things, like what are the areas or the domains that I want to spend time in. Very often we get to spend time, or we end up spending time doing things without having a proper planning up front, like, hey, why do I want to do this? So I've thought about those things before. And I've done the same thing about my professional side. And like, okay, what are the domains within my professional side that I want to spend time on? So I'm a coach and a trainer, but I'm also a teacher at the university. So I'm doing that on a very part-time basis. Um, I'm spending time there as well. So I need to make time for that in my planning as well. And what happens very often is that, we end up living our lives using Outlook or Google Calendar, I should say. Um, if we look at, hey, what is planned by me or by other people, mostly by other people, they will block time in our calendar, and then that's how we spend our times. And that's not how I live my life. There are things that are going to be planned by other people, but I'm going to decide up front, like, what time do I want to block for myself? I need to do some things for myself. And so I manage those things on purpose. And I don't let it be a coincidence that I'm going to go running today or not. I'm going to do some exercising today or not. I'm going to be spending time with family or with other people or not. I planned for those things. And when I'm going to have this call with you, I'm planning those things as well. Um, so work-life balance comes from knowing what is important to you. So you really want to make a list of that for yourself. Like, what are the things that I really, or the areas that I really want to spend time in? So be mindful and purposeful about that, and then dedicate time to that. Because the disbalance that people experience is usually that they haven't spent time on the things that they wanted to spend time on. And if you ask them, like, why didn't you spend time there? It's because it got absorbed by all the other things that came in their way, and they were not able to say no to that.
Thank you, Deepak.
I
That
think,
was very. Sorry,
I
go
think,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I think I'm giving way too long answers to your questions.
No, no, it's perfect actually. But as you were mentioning on your structure, so how do you stay motivated and productive without the structure of a corporate job?
Okay. Um, so so going back to what I just mentioned about the domains that I have, so health, relationship, family, and so on, what's also important to decide for yourself, and maybe even better, write down for yourself, like, why those domains are important for you. When I was at younger, I'm 59 now, by the way. So when I was in my late 30s, sorry, when I was a lot younger, I should say in my 20s or so, I said, you know what? When I'm 50, it's okay if I die when I'm 50. Uh, and because I thought, like, I don't want to become old and sick and depending on other people. I want to be at the peak of my life, and then bang, I'm gone. And that was what I thought of myself. And I'm 59 now, so I'm still here. So, um, but when I was in my late 30s, um, I was thinking, like, you know what? Maybe 50 is too early. Maybe 50 is not the right number. So I thought, like, well, then. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to be 50. I'm going to be 150. And that inspired me, right? I'm like, wow, 150. I still don't want to be old and depend. I mean, I don't want to be old and sick and depending on other people and, not looking great and not feeling great. That's not what I want. So what do I want? So I thought, like, you know what? I'm going to be 150 and I'm going to be feeling exactly the way that I'm feeling right now. I'm going to be able to do the same things that I'm doing right now, and I'm going to look the same way as I look right now. So now it's over 20 years later than when I set that goal for myself. Uh, and I've been able, so I feel much better actually now than I felt back then, than when I was 37. Um, I'm able to do more now than I was able to do back then, because back then I wasn't able to run a long distance of, let's say, a long distance for me back then was running something like 20 kilometers, because I would have pain in my back or pain in my knee. And I thought like, that was my situation back then. And now I have ran 6 marathons already. Since the age of 49, I started running marathons. Um, I couldn't do that back then. So I'm able to do now more than I was able to do back then. And I'm glad this is not video. Um, and I look much better now than I looked back then. I mean, I have less hair, but I feel I look much better than I looked back then. Um, so to get back to your question, it's like you need to have a reason why that is important to you. So if health is important to me, why is that important? So there must be a purpose behind it. So when there's a purpose behind the goal that you're setting for yourself, you're going to be more eager to achieve that goal, because there's going to be a time when you don't feel motivated to do something. There's going to be some days that you feel like, no, I'm tired. Oh, there's this thing going on. I want to be doing that. I don't want to do this. Um, and then you're going to be challenged. You're going to be challenged about your goals every day. But if there's a reason that's driving you to go for your goals, then you're going to go for it. If there is no strong enough reason to go for your goals, you're not going to follow through. And then everything that comes in between is going to become a reason to distract yourself. So if you want to stay focused on your goal, you need to have a reason to follow through. I hope that answers your question, Anna.
Yes, yes, indeed, and it makes very, very sense, honestly. And well, that's impressive. 6 marathons, very impressive.
Thank you.
Um, so, if I may ask you, what was or what is, or what was the most rewarding aspect of being self-employed?
So what I said already, when I became self-employed, and actually the most, I mean, in the beginning, it was the financial piece. The first 3 years, financially, it was like, I would call it the financial heaven for me. That was really great. Um, but after that, actually was more rewarding, because when I decided to go into coaching and training, I was able to decide when I'm going to work and where I'm going to work. And as I said earlier, my mother's health was not getting better, or would not get better over the years to come. And for me, the most rewarding was that I got to spend time with my mother every day. I was with her every day over the last few years. And um, I think that was the most rewarding piece for me, because I decided to become self-employed and go into this uh, side of the profession, because I wanted to have time to be with the people that I love most. And I knew my mother was going to have a tough time growing older. And I wanted to be that support for her. And I didn't want her to end up in an elderly home way too early. And I said, like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to support her as much as possible. And I was able to do that, being self-employed, doing what I'm doing, and doing it, while being with her. Um, so for me, that has been. I try not to get emotional about it, Anna, but for me, that has been fantastic. I mean, looking back at the years that I spent with her every day. My mother passed away almost 3 years ago now. So she um, made, I made her life a little bit easier, especially the last few years, and she made my life very rewarding in the last few years of her life. So I'm really grateful for that. And if I was not being self-employed, I'm not sure if I could do that. Would be extremely difficult to do that the way I did it anyway. So that has been the most rewarding thing for me.
Thank you for sharing, Deepak. And well, it's very not rewarding to you. I'm quite sure that it was for your mother as well. And well, it's an inspiration for all of us that are listening to you. It comes to a point that it's good to make in perspective what is the most important.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
as a closure now, do you have any thoughts to share with our listeners?
Yeah. Actually, I would like to share the same thought with them as I mentioned earlier on in our conversation. I really want to encourage people to think about what they're doing and why they're doing it. You know, um, because if you're doing something that you love and you enjoy, I would say, great. You're a very fortunate person, and so keep doing that and give it your all. And it's not always the financial reward that we need to be happy. It's, by the way, it's never the financial reward that we need to be happy. Nice, but it's not the most important thing. Um, but so if you're doing something that you love doing, that's great. Keep doing that. But if you're doing something, if you look at what you're doing, and if it doesn't make you happy, you know, you want to consider about, why am I doing this? Why do I keep doing this? What do you need to change for yourself? To keep doing it, because sometimes we cannot change for whatever reason. We cannot change, but what do you need to change for yourself to start enjoying it? And if you can't change it, what's preventing you? What's preventing you to make the change? So that's the final thought that maybe would love the listeners to think of while they listen to this conversation.
Thank you, Deepak. It was a very, very inspiring conversation and very interesting. I'm quite sure everyone will be very glad to hear, and all of the experience that you shared, it was very helpful to our project managers. So
Thank you very
listeners,
much.
thank you. Listeners, if you like today's topic, you may want to learn more about Deepak and his work. You will find the links in the description area. So thank you for listening us, and until the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to PM Untold. From groundbreaking innovations to nurturing high-performing teams, we are your go-to resource for mastering leadership. For questions or suggestions, contact us at beneluxpodcast@pmi.lu. Subscribe to PM Untold today as we redefine leadership one story at a time. Stay inspired.